is the Filipino community at Cal?
So, and this has changed over the many years that I've been here, but now I've come to see the Filipino community at Cal at its essence as a form of retention for the students here, because especially experiencing the rigor for like the past 3.5 years at Berkeley, I honestly think I could not have made it through without having a close-knit support system. So then coming to Berkeley, my first exposure to it was during senior weekend, which was basically when before you get to actually come to Berkeley as a student, you're still in high school, but you're admitted. You get to explore the campus, and a cultural group on campus hosts you. So I was hosted by the Filipino community, and that was the first time that I was surrounded by so many other Filipinos other than myself and my sister and my family. So then, but then it really still sort of felt like family, because one thing that I've been like hearing time and time again is that Filipinos love to, like, part of their culture is being very familial and welcoming. So my experience at the Filipino community in a very like simplistic sense has just been very familial, very getting to know each other. I think that at the heart of it, that's what I joined for, and that's what I've still stuck around for, to get to know other people on a personal, familiar level.
Gotcha.
I think at Cal, the Filipino community seems very, of course, very welcoming, very hospitable. It makes me feel at home, as I mentioned earlier. And it's crazy to feel like I know people, even though I haven't formally met them. It was sort of the demographic here being so small. I feel like when a Filipino sees another Filipino, it snaps, and it's a sense of security and understanding, and I get that here. And I really love it. I think, however, I still feel there is sort of maybe like a small separation or like distinction between the Philam community and the Asian American community at large. It seems very visible. It seems, and I part of me really appreciates that. Just because, yeah, we do deserve to separate ourselves.
So how would you describe the Filipino community at Cal?
Great. So I think the Filipino community at Cal is best represented by basically what like a Filipino American student experiences here on this campus. So it's like beyond just like the 8 organizations or the Filipino American organizations on campus. It's beyond like the Filipino classes that we have here, but rather kind of like the amalgamation of all those different experiences, resulting in this kind of like very fluid, very vibrant, and sometimes also very distinct pockets of community here at Cal.
So, what is the Filipino community at Cal?
So I think there are like 2 things for me when I think of the Filipino community at Cal, like practice and like theoretically, or like how I would envision it ideally. In practice, I really do think that when we talk about the Pil community here on campus, it means being involved in one of the organizations. And that's something I struggled with, because when I was a sophomore and I wanted to get involved in the Pil community, I felt like I had to join an organization, and so I interned for both PAA and PASS. But even then, like, it didn't matter how much I volunteered or interned, it felt like I still felt excluded, because like it felt like I still wasn't one of them unless like I was actually on like a core or staff. And so it wasn't until I actually became a staff member in PASS, that's when I felt like I was actually included for the first time. And that's like when people started like acknowledging my presence in the community. And so like when people talk about, oh yeah, I feel excluded in the community, like I understand where they're coming from because I felt that way until I like became a part of PASS. And now that I'm not part of the org, even if I'm like PCC chair or like part of like a council that's supposed to serve the community, it still feels like, because I'm not in one of those organizations, I still feel like an outsider. So I think that's what it is in practice, and like theory ideally. Like I wish in theory, like as long as you identify as Filipino, Filipinx, American, you can be part of the PIL community. But like sadly that's not the case. And even when we talk about the PIL community, there's still, or like when we talk about the Filipinx identity, there is like a dominant type of identity like that's put forward. And what I mean by that is like we don't talk about intersectionality, for example. We don't talk about the undocumented experience. We don't talk about like what it means to be queer in the PIL community. Yeah, there's a lot.
So is there any reason that you think that Filipinos don't talk about their immigration status?
Just my own personal experience. Like my parents hate talking about it. And really random like internet comments. Also but of course that's like the internet always magnifies things a lot. When my mom had done like a press conference on AB 60, which is a driver's license for undocumented immigrants, and she was featured in like a Filipino newspaper, and it was online. The article was put up online. Like there was this really mean comments about how she doesn't belong in this country, and like she should just go back and follow the rules, and she's ruining it for everyone. And the fact that my relatives also just don't talk all about us being undocumented, and I know they know, and like they kind of just thought that things were gonna fix themselves. And so I also like that adds to it, and because some like family members don't want their kids like associating with us because they see us as like this like radical activist person because we like choose to like out ourselves in public as undocumented and not have a problem with like talking about our immigration status and like taking part in things like this, like sharing your story or like supporting people during protests or rallies. So yeah.
And I think that there's not really spaces, from my own personal experience, for people who are not quote unquote full Filipino. And like, what does that even mean even? Because it's like, you know, we have a history of colonization. I mean, we talked about this at like the P4 workshop that you went to, but yeah, like, I mean, like, we have like a colonized history from like the Spanish and the Japanese and the Americans. And it's like, what does it even mean to be Filipino anymore? And so it's like, and I'm like half of whatever that means. And so it's even more complicated because it's like, I constantly feel like there's this challenge of like authenticity. And almost like if I don't really fully understand the references some people say in the Filipino community, or if I don't watch the, what are they even called? Like the soap operas in the Filipino community. I don't read the same things. I haven't eaten all the same foods, or like don't listen to all the same artists, or am not a dancer, and like are not like super into like some of the things that I've like observed in the Filipino community that has formed that cohesion in certain groups. Like I have personally felt excluded from that and have not felt comfortable in those spaces because I can't fully engage in those conversations or those activities, because that has not been my like lived experience. And so I say that I don't want to say change what that cohesion means, but I think reevaluating that and like realizing that like if we really are a dying culture, what are we doing about it?
I think that like we, as a Filipino community, that we very much preach community, right? Being connected, isang bagsak, one down, one fall. And not to say that we don't do that, but I think that there are ways that I wish and hope that we were more connected.
So the way Isang Bagsak works is that it starts from the beat of your heart. So everybody feel your heartbeat. And it culminates into clapping, and then it ends in one big clap. So
What would you change about the PIL community?
What I would change about the PIL community is ideally that we would have more cohesiveness within the organizations. And I know that would involve more time from each person to collaborate with each other, but I feel like it also eliminates the time where we do separate things. So then it would mean a little bit of like not necessarily losing your individuality as a PIL organization, but more so putting the community at large before I'm only in this org, and then also just breaking down like the whole idea of people belong to orgs. Like basically, what I would change about the PIL community is where people would put the PIL community first. Because like that's what I love about the PIL community is that it's an entire community, but when it becomes divisive, like, oh, I can't go to this space, I can't go to this meeting because it's PAX meeting, I can't go here because it's Precise space, that's where it becomes divided, and then we're all trying to do our own programming because we have like this individualistic like mindset. But I feel like there's so many ways where we can like play off of each other and benefit off of each other, and then in doing that it would kind of start to break down the barriers, and anyone in any org would feel just as welcome in any other org. So I know I'm kind of privileged where I do feel welcome in like many of the spaces in the PIL community, but I've just come across people who have expressed their like, oh, in certain spaces I don't feel as comfortable, even though we are like the community.
So what are some things that you think that people could do to change the PIL community in this way?
So one of the things that I think we could do to change it is, as I was talking about earlier, the internship program is something that many of the PIL orgs do. And what we do is it sort of becomes this thing of like, not necessarily, it's just very noticeable like when the people who come out to your info session or the people that you're able to outreach to are a lot of times going to be proportional by the number of interns you'll get as an organization. And organizations sort of rely on their interns to support like our general events and things like that. So that I think one of the ways is having like a general application for the internship programs, and this is something I've like talked about with other people. I don't know how feasible it would be, but just so that you're not just closed off, because someone can benefit so much from a space that they just don't know about, or they feel like they don't know the people in that space, so they're less inclined to like go there and intern.
I don't really consider myself part of the Filipino community. When I think about that, at least at Cal, I think about those, is it 8 or 9 Phil orgs on campus? That's who I like think about when I hear like, oh, the Filipino community at Cal. And so because I'm not really like in any of those orgs, I don't consider myself part of it. And so it's really like, I don't know, I don't think I can answer it that well, the question.
So have you been a part of the Filipino community in any way at Cal?
I've attended, I feel like, some of the events because I have been taking Filipino language classes since my first semester here. And then we do like an oral exam at the end of the semester where you usually like perform or do like a skit or do a poem at the end of it. And so the last one, I think, the last event was like the one that involved, at least in my head, involved like the other Filipino or the Phil community, the Phil orgs on campus. So I don't know if that would really count.
Is there any particular reason why you might not be involved in the Filipino community as you defined it, the 8 or 9 organizations?
I think it's because I kind of just like grew up not like identifying with the Filipino community as much. Like it's not really something I've noticed. Filipinos don't really talk a lot about their immigration status, and it's even like, I think, worse if you are undocumented, because then there's like no talk about it at all. But I have like met some really great like undocumented Filipino activists. I just don't know as many on campus, and so haven't really felt the need to kind of like reach out to them. And there's also like this perception that the Filipino, at least for me, that the Filipino community is like really cliquey, and it's kind of like hard to like go in there without really knowing someone.
I think that there are a lot of resources for Filipino students, but only those Filipino students who fit almost this like narrative of what it means to be Filipino. Again, it's like, you know, it's like we're gonna provide you resources and we're gonna provide you community, but only if you fit into this version of what is acceptable to be a Filipino and what it takes to actually fit in to the community. Because otherwise you're just not, and you're gonna feel weird, like I have. And you're gonna feel like, okay, maybe this really isn't my community, because they're not actually identifying the values and the needs that I want to get out of my college experience.
Some things I would change about the Phil community. I feel like sometimes there's a DTM, like doing too much culture, that I think would definitely help address some of the issues that I see in the Phil community, which includes burnout. What else? I guess I hate to use buzzwords. I would say I wish there was more intentionality in terms of why we do things, just because I feel like that also contributes to burnout. And I'm referencing burnout because that's something that myself, like, I feel that is very real for me sometimes. I'm trying to think. I feel like we don't necessarily talk about differences within our PIL identities in the community, which I think would be really helpful. Yeah. I wish we would talk a bit more about our PIL identities, specifically differences within those, just because there's not one way to be Filipino.
I think that there's kind of like a misunderstanding of like what it even means to be what it means to be a community, and like two, like why are the different organizations there in terms of like fostering your community and like fostering this vision that each of the individual orgs have for each other, and like on a broader scale, like I guess like Filipinos in general on campus. I don't know if that's ranting. I just have a lot of feelings, I guess, like on that, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what are some things that you would change about the Filipino community?
Things that I would change. So I guess like there's been a lot of talk of overprogramming and oversaturation with events. And like I understand why a lot of these different events are important, and like why people want to try new things in order to get more turnout and to get more people. But I think that collaboration is such a huge thing, and that like collaboration helps with allowing different groups to come together and support a similar vision, right? And if like, yeah, I think in general, collaboration helps with being able to connect with other community members who have the same vision and reach a common goal of, and I guess even asking like what is the goal at the end of the day of these events? Like, is it just for more people in your org, or is it for people to engage with their engage with their identity and their community in such a way that actually gives them life and wanting to continue forward, right? Because I don't think that I really doubt that people put on events just to put on events, and that like behind these events is a certain vision that people are looking for, that people are striving for, like that kind of it factor, just like this is what drives me to do the work that I do, and this is why I'm continuing to do it. And the reason why I'm inviting people to these events is because I want people to see what that it thing is.
So if there is something I would change in the Phil community, I would say it's not just about advocating for inclusivity, but actually doing it and acting on it.